My name is Yehuda Michael. I'm a program director at MCTC. Thank you for joining us from all over the world. MCTC and Meshav, Israel Agency for International Development Cooperation at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is welcoming you to Spotlight on Women Leaders of the World series. On the series, we invite women leaders from across the world to share with us their experience. If you have any question for our guests, please feel free to write down in the chat and we will get those questions at the end of the interview. Once again, thank you for joining us. We will start in shortly. I think everybody's in, so we can start now. We are honored to host today Liza Maria, the founder and president of Spring of Hope Foundation. Liza Maria is an Israeli living in northern Iraq, helping ISS victims rebuilding their lives and providing hope to the Yazidi children and women living in refugee camps in Kurdistan. Liza holds a degree from University of Rome in History of Art, as well as a degree from Oxford University in History of Art, International Business Economics and Relationship. Liza is a member of Genocide Watch in New York, as well as a board of advisors at the Jerusalem Center for Prevention of Genocide. Welcome and shalom, Liza, Mary. It's a pleasure to have you in this program.
Thank you, Yehuda.
Thank you also for taking time in your very busy schedule to join us today. First question would be, what motivates you to establish a Spring of Hope, and how did you reach into the Yazidi communities, and what actually motivates you to start your work in northern Iraq?
Thank you for your question, Yehuda. And first of all, thank you to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and to all who help us and support us and help me personally there. And thank you to MCTC, to Meshav and these amazing colleagues who input into our life as a team in the Kurdish region of Iraq. How did I start? I was part of an international research team for many years, of which I was the tiniest cog. I don't think I should have been on the team. I was the tiniest cog. And we were tracking the international movement of funds that were supporting terrorism and ultimately both training physically and supporting Hamas terrorists in Israel. And believe it or not, this lengthy research process over some 13, 14 years led to northern Iraq, to the tiny town of Halabja, which was destroyed by the Anfal campaign led by Saddam Hussein. And when we went to visit the victims of this genocide as a legal team, again, and I'm not a legal person, I was there by grace and some favor, we went to visit the Yazidis, and we were Jews on that team, and we felt as Jews we could not be there looking at one point of genocide past and ignoring a genocide that was barely 6 months into its now 7th year. And that was the starting point for now what has become my life in northern Iraq.
Wow, it's a very inspiring story. Thank you for sharing. As an Israeli living in Iraq and helping ISS victims rebuilding their lives, you must have faced a big challenge in the beginning. Tell us a little bit about this challenge and how you overcome them. What challenge do you see now after having working there for 5 years?
What challenge do I as an Israeli find, or what are the challenges?
As an Israeli, basically, as an Israeli.
That's a very loaded question, Yehuda. As an Israeli, you are both welcomed because the Yazidi community and the Kurdish community, they know very little about Israel, but they know they love Israel because there are parallels in both past and present history. But I live under the magnifying glass and as I live under suspicion. And anything that Israel does or does not, or may be perceived to have done in the region, it always comes back to me. Was I involved? No, friends, I was sound asleep in my bed. So one just learns to live very low profile, not denying who I am, making no fuss about it, and learning to accept that the more transparency, the better, because I always will be questioned. This actually was the first year, and it's no guarantee that we can ever repeat this, but this was the first year in 6 years where we were able to commemorate International Holocaust Remembrance Day without getting a massive backlash or being told it's a Jewish agenda or an Israeli agenda. Will we be able to do it next year? We'll have to wait and see. It's an inshallah.
That's great. Thank you. Uh, can you discuss with us a little bit about the vision of your organization? Can you elaborate like what it is and what is the vision is and
If
your
I
vision
were
basically?
to compress it into words, obviously the sort of the vision statement or the mission statement would be to bring long-term help, aid, um, empowerment, education to victims of genocide or to persecuted minorities in the region. But I think as anybody who has worked in the field of acts of war, acts of crimes against humanity, acts of terrorism know, to be realistic, one has to assess the period of time or the season of time and see what the needs of that people group are vis-a-vis the time, because we're now February 201, where are we, 2021. Well, the needs of the Yazidi community, the needs of kids who are becoming our students, who are being discovered in Al Hol camp now, and one came across the border last night. Well, it's totally different from 6 years ago. So to adhere to a vision that is 6 years old would be plain stupidity. You take it as your base and you work according to the time and the season that is appropriate to the community.
Great. Actually, this will lead me into the next question that I want to ask you, which is, can you tell us how do you recruit organization members and participants in the programs that you do, and also elaborate more about the programs that you're doing in the organization?
Well, my staff Yehuda is entirely Yazidi. We have 20 members of staff that work full time, 5 or 6 days a week, 6 days a week, and 50% are Shingali, which means they were displaced from northwest Iraq, from their ancient homeland of Sinjar, Shingal, when Daesh entered and conquered the lands in August 2014. Out of these 10 members of staff, half of them still live inside a tent in Sharia camp, half have rented apartments with their tribal families in the village. The other Yazidis are Walati, which means they were born in the region of Kurdistan, some for 6, 7, 8 generations, and have grown up there. I do not recruit. I get 100 CVs every single day from qualified but unemployed Yazidis looking. I push away people. Those who are my staff, our team, our staff have come really by personal recommendation and also taking a chance. Out of all of our team members over the last few years, we only had one who was not a fit, and after a few months asked him to find a better fit for himself. So I believe we've been incredibly fortunate. What do? We have a strong psychotrauma department, a medical department, play therapy, ESL, both on the ground and with 4 different ESL teachers now who come in from abroad. Our arts department is growing into both contemporary arts and now performing arts, dance, drama, music, which is both music as therapy, music as orchestra, music as a band, an incredible sewing factory where these women are just taking off and running with design, color, and beginning to set up small businesses. Sports is a strong department. So over these period of years, yes, there is exceptional expansion, which I personally find hard to keep up with as somebody who's always having a bright new idea, which is totally relevant. And then what do you do about it? We have kids coming in 20, 30, literally every day, particularly during this past year with the pandemic. Schools, kindergartens, every form of educational system has been shut down, and incredibly, we've been given the authorization to stay open. So we have 30, 40 kids coming in a day and saying, I want science, I want chemistry, I want geography, I want to learn this musical instrument. It is a community, it is a people group that, yes, one that they have gained through this tragic genocide, the legal status of IDP, of internally displaced person or refugee, but their brains are some of the most intelligent in the world.
Wow, it's really inspiring story to hear. Can you give us an example of people who get support through your organizations? Those people who really you remember and you tell the stories all the time.
Well, there are so many because we serve 200 children from the age now of 7, which means they were born in the captivity of ISIS, either when ISIS was still in Mosul or Tel Afar in northern Iraq, or shortly after when it was opened up in Syria. We serve 200 a day of these kids, and we have another 200 IDPs. But I'll just give you one happy end because it can seem totally overwhelming when talking about former child soldiers, former teen soldiers who fought alongside al-Baghdadi on the front lines, or women who were trafficked and raped and became pregnant. A couple of years ago, beautiful young girl came back, released, rescued from ISIS. She was found in Raqqa, Syria, came across the border, came to us. And it's a story that I will never forget because the very first time I met her in her tent, she was skinny, she was pale, she was starving, she had not, she was suffering from chronic malnutrition, and she didn't know me. And she said to me, I want to show you my stomach. Is that okay with you? So I didn't know what to say. Protocol said yes. We went into her tent. She covered her stomach with a blanket, pulled her long dress up. Her entire body, all of her torso, was cut into pieces, was the most ugly scars, full of pus, blood, stains that one could imagine. She had no idea what had been done to her. Incredible pain, emotionally, physically, inability to eat. She got married a year ago, and on, I think it was Saturday morning, she had a baby. Against all odds, she had a baby. So this is, this is the, let's say, the crock of gold at the end of the rainbow that encourages us as a family, as a team, to keep going and to push through because we have very, very hard times.
It's very sad, but it's a happy ending. Good to hear such a stories, indeed. Can you tell us about a day in your life? Like, what do you do, see, and whom do you interact with? Just take us into the journey.
Day, because we have two centers. We have one center in a place called War City for Syrian refugees, from those who originally escaped from the Assad regime. They were based in Halab, in Aleppo, and then more recently those who've come in from the Rojava for the same reasons: terror, starvation, and they're in the War City Domiz area. So we have the kindergarten there, and yes, it works like clockwork. We have the Hope Center for the Yazidis inside Sharia camp, and yes, it works like clockwork. But, and the but is massive, life happens and things happen, and we have to be ready at the moment to cancel lessons, to shift a lesson. This last week, last Saturday night, my phones began to ping like off the radar. And suddenly I saw that I think originally it was about 15 of our teenagers would be going to Kojo to receive the bones of their family members that had now been identified by Baghdad and were going to be laid to burial, to rest in Kojo village. It ended up with 35 of our students up in Kojo. So this entire week has changed. We've cancelled lessons, we've changed topics. I was working early this morning, even on Valentine's Day. Next week, let's make a big blue cake for the boys and a big pink cake for the girls. Let's do artwork just so that they know they're loved. Let's now examine the subject of friendship. And with that, we're on the phone day and night for the last week with these teenagers, some of whom have buried 6, 7 family members. So, yes, there is a structure, but yes, there is the outworkings of life. 1 month ago, one of our girls, she was fairly new to us. She had been rescued from ISIS. She killed herself. She hung herself with her headscarf inside her tent. It wasn't actually connected. It was a community issue. It was a social media issue. But that
I
set off, or that was part of a chain of 5 suicides in the camp, not our students. But again, you stop everything. You go into suicide prevent motion. We received less patients in our medical clinic and sent teams out into the camp training families, kids, inner circle, secondary circle, third circles, how to recognize, how to listen, how to observe. So, yes, there is a typical day, and then there are more non typical days than there are typical.
Well, it seems like really challenging days that comes up and changing the whole course of work that you plan to do. But at the end of the day, I hear the great stories and the great things you do. So that's really, really inspiring. Um, Another question I want to ask you is, what are the most important decisions you make as a leader of your organization? Can you point out some of them?
Yes, I would say number one, I wrote an article on this a couple of weeks ago. There is no I in a team, but to succeed in this hard area, there has to be unity. There has to be a like mind, a like goal, a like vision, and we have to live as a family, which means living strong. So, my decisions regarding my staff have been learning to live as a family, which at time has meant even how to wash dirty clothes in public and exit with respect and with honor. Some of the decisions I've made regarding students have been exceptionally hard. Um, One kid, I won't give you his name, but he was one of the frontliners soldiers in Syria, had carried out every order, including many beheadings. And one day he walks into the center. I looked into his eyes. His eyes were so black, it was looking into hell and way beyond. And some of my executive staff said, what if there's a trigger and I said, and what if not? What if by not accepting him, because these are the kids that we exist for, what if by accepting him, we're pressing a reject button, which will then ripple out to the community and they too will reject. And so we accepted him. And yes, I gave my team instructions: grow ears on the palms of your hand, grow ears on the back of your head, listen to everything that's being said. We had another one come to us who could have been rescued 2 years prior to the actual date of his rescue, and he chose to stay with ISIS because he was being trained to set up the caliphate in Kurdistan. Another, what do you do? Do you give the kid a chance? Do you trust him? Do you reject him? And these two today are actually still up in Kojo, burying the bones of their families, but have totally rejected the philosophy, and both, yes, with the help of us, but with their heart and their initiative, have opened up small businesses and are productive members of the community and of our campus life.
That's a really great story. Thank you for sharing with us. Another question would be, what is one of the things do you believe has been a major factor in you achieving your goal? What is that?
I think I can only answer as a Jew and as an Israeli, which is of course of what I am, is watching the nation of Israel emerge from the ashes of the Holocaust, and how Israel over the years has become a light to the world. And I'm a woman of great faith, and I know my Tanakh, and I know that this is the mandate of Israel, to be a light, to be an example to the world. And so on those wobbly moments, I do look at that. I think also seeing these kids, seeing their passion for life, seeing their determination, seeing that despite so many setbacks, nothing will stop them. How can I walk away? How can we walk away? How can we walk away and say it's somebody else's responsibility? No apathy, neutrality, or so-called, these are the killers of our society, saying somebody else's business. No, I am my brother's keeper, and if I can even only just affect one life, well, that buck stops with me. It is my responsibility.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I think it will lead me to my final question to you. Who inspired you and why? We all get inspiration from some people. Who are those people to you?
Wow, that's a question for a thesis, Yehuda. I think being a Jerusalemite, living through the years of the Intifada, living as we all did in Israel, knowing that sadly the bombs were going to go off, our kids were involved, our neighbors were involved, our workmates, our colleagues, our friends, and that was my family's experience in Jerusalem. That, unknown to me, was building the foundation literally from the blood of lives sacrificed here in Israel. That was the foundation for for the ability to walk into the Yazidi community at their direst hour in their ancient history.
Thank you, Lisa, for sharing all the amazing stories that you have and about the amazing job you're doing in northern Iraq and the Yazidi communities. I think we do have a few questions actually from the audience. My colleague Sarah Wilner, the Deputy Director of MCTC, probably gonna rise up. Sarah, please.
Thank you. Thanks, Yehuda. And thank you, Lisa, for just sharing this amazing story you have, that you've lived and that that you are living now with us. I think many of us have been touched throughout this past half hour with your stories of people that you are helping, you know. And one question that I've seen on the chat is, what advice? I mean, many people have dreams and would like to share and to start doing something and to help, and you know, they have ideas. But what advice would you give to make it concrete, to actually, I mean, you're one of the few that actually has done something. You've decided, I'm going to do it, I'm going to move, I'm going to help these people, and you're doing it. So how do we start? What do we do?
I remember, I'm sure those of you here in Israel will know Arnold Roth, the founder of the Malki Foundation. I can remember sitting with Arnold years ago, and he said to me, I can't take in 6 million. I can't take in X amount of Holocaust survivors, but I can connect with the story of one. And I think this is where we begin. And yes, it may be almost a beginning in naivety, but you begin with one and it grows. But I would say, looking at our young student body, they're nearly all orphans. And so if you commit, don't mess around, commit. I've seen too many people come in these past 6 years with such highfalutin promises, and then the fashion moved elsewhere. It was no longer the Yazidis, and people were devastated. So walk with caution, walk with honor, walk respecting the community which has opened its doors to you, but start with one. Start with one.
I mean, it's amazing. I think that there's something that we don't think. Just start with one, and you know, and it will continue and it will grow, and that's something that we can all do. So that's great advice. Thank you. We have another question in the chat from someone. It's from Ellen. She says, before I joined this meeting, I read about Springs of Hope, and after that, the song "Over the Rainbow" was stuck in my mind. Can you please tell us more about the Rainbow Zone and its meaning?
Yes, we have to, it's a very good question, and we have to remember the origins of the song Over the Rainbow, which was written about the gas chambers and the chimneys, and somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds sing and bluebirds fly. And that was very much the inspiration for calling it the Rainbow Zone. The first group of kids that came to us were teenagers, and we just gave them, you know, we were naive. What do? We gave them an easel and paints, and they all painted over the rainbow. Literally, they painted their walk from Syria in starvation, being fronted by Daesh, by guns, by beheading, by seeing it all, and still surviving. So it's the somewhere over the rainbow place, yes.
And what kind of activities do you do there with the children in the Rainbow Zone? I mean, is it something that the children can just show up, and how does it work exactly?
We have 3 semesters, each of 4 months a year. And at the moment, it's a kindergarten that we take the children between 4 years old and 6 years old, according to the mama's request. The mamas know exactly what they want. So we have both the Syrian Kurdish kids, and we have Arabs from Mosul who were also displaced with Daesh. We teach them English, Kurdish, Arabic, reading and writing. And then, of course, because they are kids, art and games and music. We also hold a cross-cultural master art class once a week with Assyrian teenagers who are incredible painters, who are able to tell any story, have very firm positions about women's rights, human rights, children's rights, and are able to depict this in the most incredible depth of painting and creativity. So we have a master art class for them once a week with our Yazidi kids, so that there is cross-cultural interaction.
And so, you know, when I hear about these stories of people in the camps, I wonder, this may be a very difficult question to answer, but what's the future for the Yazidi community there? What?
Sadly, it's a very pertinent question, Sarah, and one that is obviously always on everybody's mind. And since we've now moved into the 7th year of displacement, 7th year of tents, 7th year of these tiny kerosene heaters setting fire to tents and people in the night, unless, again, you see, this is so multi-layered. I was going to say, unless Sinjar, the very basic infrastructure, has billions of dollars and is rebuilt and they go back, there is no real future. But I then have to do an autocorrect on myself that many of the Sinjaris in Sharia camp have actually set up small businesses or collectively purchased a field, and they are doing well. And even give them their home back, they do not want to go. They have now embraced the original Median/Kurdish identity and are doing well. Some of our girls who are not survivors of the Kocho genocide massacre, they went to be with friends, to support friends. And they said to us, we don't want to go to Sinjar. We never want to go back there. Even if our homes and even if there's money, we will not go back there. But this is a massive dilemma. For how long can one keep 500,000 people in tents? Yes, some have moved outside. There is building in the village. Most of the building is by Shingalis, who are now making their positioning in the village permanent. So it's a very multi-leveled. Some have gone back and some have returned to the camp with the presence of Iran, the presence of Hashd al-Shabi, the presence of every militia up there, which is the militia of the day. When there's no security and they don't feel safe and they feel that they're sitting ducks, then they come back. So many answers to that, Sarah.
It's a question to continue asking, I guess.
Yeah.
So listening to your stories and listening to, I'm trying to put myself in your situation, hearing these stories and, you know, one after the other of people who have suffered, but also people who have really overcome the suffering and who have moved on, like you said, started small businesses and who have had a baby. That's an amazing story of this woman. How do you take care of yourself? It must be emotionally, psychologically, yeah. What do you do to make sure that there's no burnout on your side?
It's a very good question. I have learned to put up strong boundaries. I have learned to withdraw times of the day when I shut down. Somebody in Israel years ago said to me, Lisa, you have to become like a non-stick frying pan, a frying pan that can endure the flames, but it's not going to stick. And to the best of my ability, I have done that. But yes, there are times when I and my team are totally overwhelmed. There's times when I can remember when the first time when Dr. Said and Saad, I think it was, and I went up to visit the mass graves in Kojo. And it was the days when you could still walk around and you could see a skull here and a bone there and a piece of cloth there. And we got into the car and there was no music, there was no chatter, there was silence. And after 10 minutes, I said, stop the car, everybody out. And we just hugged and we literally screamed. We just screamed. And there's been days when I've come home and I've put my head under the pillow and screamed and cried. And there's days when my shower has become my place where I even sort of imagine the dirt is washing off, the stress is washing off, the trauma is washing off. But it is a hard one because one lives inside the community 24/7. But the quickest answer is grow Teflon.
Non-stick pan. I like that analogy a lot of dealing with the flames, but not being stuck. Yeah, not having it stuck to you. And I think that you're incredibly strong and resilient, you know, to come up with your own coping mechanisms to deal with everything that you're going through. And we had popped up a question on the chat as well, was what do your family and friends think about what you're doing?
It's hard for my family because they're Tel Avivians or Jerusalemites, and mum is most of her time in northern Iraq. I have lost a lot of friends over this, and I have gained some amazing friends. And the closest of my friends who've been friends for many years in the city and actually they're board members, they have amazingly been able to make this transition together. So it's been a mixture. I mean, my kids can say kol hakavod, you know, great respect, Imma, but yalla, time to come home. So
yeah, I can understand that there's a mixed reaction, and they want their mom close to them, but you're also doing such amazing work that they want to support you. There's a question in the chat as well about whether or not you give lectures to your university students. I think people here are very interested in possibly inviting you, and if that's something that you have time permitting in your schedule.
I do. I lecture on a fairly regular basis until, of course, COVID shut the physical down at the Hebrew U in Jerusalem. And I do lectures on Zoom to universities abroad. So yes, that can be accommodated.
Okay, great. So I think maybe what we can do is if people are interested in being in touch with you, they can be in touch with us, or directly maybe we can put your email in the chat. And okay, that'd be wonderful. I think that's all the questions that we have from chat. I would like to pass it on to you as just, you know, if you have any last comments that you would like to give. And I see that Chava actually would like to say a few words. So maybe I'll pass it to Chava.
I just wanted to say, as you know, we think your work and you are amazing. And it is such a privilege to know you and for our center to do even the smallest thing together with you. And we're your friends. We want to stay your friends. And it is really amazing. Every time we hear you, it brings tears, it brings love to our hearts, and we want to help. And Mashav, I know the new head of Mashav, Ambassador Schlein, we'd love to meet you and see how we can continue working with you, because it's just amazing. Every time you tell another story, and heartbreaking and amazing. So thank you for being who you are, and we'd like to stay your friends.
Ava, I have to respond. It is such an honor. And yes, it is a very lonely walk as an Israeli girl. But to know that you guys and the Misrad Hoops are so behind us. It's having this mission, it's having this leaning post, and it certainly strengthens and encourages me. And I am so grateful to you all, exceptionally.
Thank you, Lisa. As Chava said, it's always amazing to hear your stories and to hear the journey that you are going through, and for us to have some inspiration from it. And really, I think what you've said about starting with one person and just going from there, you've lit something up inside of me, that's for sure. So if you have any last things that you would like to add to then we'll pass it on to you. There is one
things because they always go on forever. So now I've learned to cut.
There's one more question if you have time for the chat that just showed up, which is, how do you balance your initiative, Springs of Hope, with your, they said, normal life?
Well, there is little normal life. That is where it is hard when one is in Kurdistan 24/7. You're on call 24/7. There's what to do. And even when I'm here in Jerusalem, yes, I take more time out for errands and the normalities of life and make sure I connect with friends. But it is very hard because it's a wheel within wheels within wheels within wheels that it just never stops. So it's that is my weakness, is balance. It has taken over my life in a sense.
It's become your life, really, in a way.
It's like I can be falling asleep at 11 p.m. and one of the students will text something. How am I not going to answer? It's like saying to them, you're not important. So it is hard. It is hard. And I do, but the scales aren't exactly tipped in my favor.
So I think also what I'd like to add is that you say we can start with one person, but you have an incredible commitment to what you're doing and motivation, and which is something that is almost superhuman, I would say. If at 11 p.m. you're already answering messages from a student. So congratulations, Lisa. Congratulations on everything that you're doing. And really, we're so happy to be working with you and to continue partnering with you. And Yehuda, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much. I think we're gonna wrap up. Thank you again for Lisa for taking time to be with us. It was really, really a great pleasure to have you, and we'll continue working with you. Big thanks also for our audiences from all over the world in Zoom as well as in Facebook Live. We really thank you for joining us today. Please remember to check our social medias and website for upcoming events. We will have another guest on Spotlight on Women Leaders of the World in March. So stay tuned. Once again, thank you, Lisa, and shalom for everyone.
Thank you very much.